We welcome you to our Voices of Faith in Leadership for the 2024 cohort, and you are our law enforcement panel. Plus Warren hiding over here in the corner, yes. So we're going to go around and give you our names and where we're located, and then I'm going to turn it over to Warren. Okay. And he'll introduce you more effectively than I can. But we do thank you for being here and helping us out for that. Anne-Marie, go ahead.
Sure. Anne-Marie Delgado. I'm the Executive Director for Wyoming Interfaith Network, and I live in Beulah and serve Episcopal Church in Sundance. So thank you for coming.
Elizabeth Mount. I'm the pastor at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Angie Floyd, Saratoga, Wyoming.
Diane Martin, Powell, Wyoming.
Patricia Bell, pastor at Frontier United Methodist Church in Cheyenne.
And I'm Mary Faven out of Saratoga, and I'm the program manager for this Voices of Faith in Leadership, and work underneath Anne-Marie and Warren here and helping them to get this program running. And that is, I'm going to turn it over then. Warren?
Well, first of all, we did this panel last year. It's a lot more people here. I think, because their departing chief brought a lot of friends with them. So we had a really good discussion. I thought it was very good policing issues. Because police are in the news a lot these days, and for good reasons, and also occasionally some bad reasons. It's good to hear from them directly, to find out from their voice, understanding of what their issues are, what the issues are in policing, and how we can be helpful to them as leaders of faith around the state, and others who will watch the program. Both of them are good speakers. I mean, the sheriff here in our little gathering we had recently, is all the not-for-profits that we fund through the church through bargain box. And he was nice enough to get up to say, well, I can talk about housing problems because we can provide 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And Jason, of course, he has a nice way of talking to you very nicely. You'd never know he was the chief. But Jason Stafford, if you want to introduce yourself a little more, you're welcome to do it. And, Steve, who wants to go first?
Either way.
Let me start with Jason.
Okay.
Well, I'm Jason Stafford. I'm the chief of police in Cody, Wyoming. Been the chief just about a year now. I've been working for the Cody Police Department for almost 24 years. I have about 30 years in law enforcement total. As a deputy sheriff and an under sheriff, both back in North Dakota, in a really small community. I cherish that our chaplain program, Faith in Blue events and stuff like that. So religion's been a real important portion of my life for a long time. So I am Lutheran, been on a church council off and on many years over the years. It's just important to me.
I'm Darrell Steward. I'm the sheriff here in Park County. I've been for about a year and a half. Been in law enforcement since 1987. Started with the sheriff's department, did a year in the county jail as a detention deputy. But then went over to the Cody Police Department, was a street officer for them, then a detective, worked as a liaison to DEA, a few other agencies, and then in 2003 got hired. A lot of things, you name it, kind of done it. No, great community to work in. I've lived here my whole life, so the issues.
Start with the topic of because of some questions we had before. So that everybody understands what Title 25 is and why it's an issue.
No, we do not know.
You do know. Yeah, that's why we're going to do this thing.
So Title 25, need to speak up just a little bit, so.
Title 25 is a proceeding that they use to handle people in mental distress and in situations where there's mental illness involved. Usually they're a danger to themselves or others at that point, or maybe they go into the hospital and get titled in that way. It's an involuntary committal, for mental issues. When I first took over here as sheriff, we had several within the facility that were being held on those types of situations. But, yeah, they're pretty difficult to deal with, psychologically and monetarily, and in the facility. We actually have what we refer to as the rubber room. It's a padded cell where a lot of times these people are held. And if they're gonna be transferred down to Evanston for some reason down at the state hospital, they could spend anywhere from weeks to months with us in our facility until they have a bed down there to get transferred.
Yeah, it is it's a really impactful thing on law enforcement and the community both. A lot of times, like Darrell said, what do we do? Now they're Title 25 now, sometimes they'll stay at the hospital for the whole month, and then when they get out of control at the hospital, we're the first people that they call to go deal with the situation over there. So it does have a big impact on us when somebody is Title 25. Also, just the resources here are kind of limited as far as like facilities, but I know with the new Oxbow program that we have going here for Yellowstone behavior, that, they have some facilities locally that they'll be able to house these people in the interim until they do get a bed somewhere. So that's going to be helpful for us. And that's kind of a new program, and it's just going to start in July, where it'll be like kind of the big one reasons.
It started out as Yellowstone behavior. We've used them for years here, our kind, but now they've teamed up with Hot Springs County and I believe Washington County, and with Cloud Peak, and they formed Oxbow Center.
And my last two panelists and myself were all on the Yellowstone board. They sort of dissolved it. The state sort of made us do it because they said it's better to have you all working together and we can pay you less money. That's what they're doing.
It's a discount.
Good place to work for half the money.
Right.
It's usually how it works.
And they're struggling to get that working. So, I think they told you about that. But, and what kind of issues do they have to be doing to really get certified as 1025 besides suicide prevention?
Well, like I say, yeah, danger to themselves or others. They may just be exhibiting really odd behavior to the point where you got to deal with them. And a lot of times they'll be just taken to the hospital to do that at 1-5 if it's a non-violent situation. And if it gets violent, either out on the street or there, then they're usually brought into our facility, either with criminal charges or just directed to the detention center for holding because they're violent.
How often does this happen?
It kind of goes in waves. Like I said, when I first started, it seemed like we had 3 or 4. We just didn't have room to put them in separate padded cells.
3 or 4 in what period of time?
Month or so, a couple months. And like I say, they tend to stay with us for quite a while unless there's some sort of adjudication says they're fine. But yeah, it could take from a week to, say they could spend months in our facility, 8 months, 9 months, whatever.
And not all of them get Title 25. They'll go to a hearing process and maybe come up with a safety plan or whatever, and then get released back out into the community. But it's weekly that we're dealing with individuals that are in some type of distress. So, but it's not always a Title 25 situation. Sometimes we just go there and talk to them. A lot of times we'll hopefully get them to go to the hospital voluntarily, and then they can go.
And so that doesn't fit under the Title 25. It is a mental health situation, but it's not a Title 25 where you have to involuntary.
If they go the voluntary way,
It's not
it's
called.
not being voluntary, it's what we're
Yeah.
talking.
Okay.
And sometimes they'll go to the hospital voluntarily because we're on scene, and then they'll get to the hospital and decide,
sounds a
no,
little
we're
bit.
not doing that. And then usually the call from the hospital, the doctor will at that point say that they are Title 25. It's very hard for Darrell because he runs the jail facility, and these individuals don't belong in the jail facility, in my opinion, because it's a health issue. We're sticking them in a jail because that's the only facility. It's hard.
Yeah, Technically, they're supposed to be placed in the most therapeutic and least restrictive.
Instead of putting them in the least.
Yeah, well, and they usually escalate pretty quickly into detention if they're, exhibiting kind of violent behavior or threats.
So I
I was just gonna say, I think Yellowstone also has rules of certifying.
Yellowstone behavior, yeah, they'll come in and do an
They
evaluation.
do it.
Yeah, a new Oxbow will come in and do the evaluation, determine which way to go.
the involuntary committal is not restricted to 72 hours.
So they have to have a hearing in front of the court, so that will hear probably from Oxbow or some behavioral.
Okay, so the hearing is within 72 hours,
Yeah.
but then they can be retained.
We're starting to see a lot younger ages too. I mean, we've had a couple of 25s as young as 10 years old.
Oh, my.
Well,
Hmm.
that makes it definitely hard because we're not a juvenile holding facility.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You gotta keep them out of sight and sound. but-
Areas on why that shift, like that's gonna be young.
Yeah. I just have my theory on it, and some of the ones that are in their like mid-20s to early 30s is just a long time drug abuse, I think, has really caused issues with their mental.
Abuse.
Mhm.
So you're thinking that for the young adult, but what about the kids? Same with,
Well, I'm almost thinking generational, see. I think
Generational,
the 50 who've been abusing drugs, I think it's starting to catch up generational.
Hmm.
Yeah, it seems to be getting worse.
Yeah, there's a lot of the people that we deal with frequently in the mental health situations, we know have been abusing drugs for a long time. That's kind of like putting those two coincidences together. So,
as you've seen it,
yeah.
just in your
Yeah.
real work.
So what are some of the other big issues that you think are right out there now that?
The issues for us are retention and recruitment of help. I mean, that's nationwide, but
Yeah.
we're hit with it. Oh, man, it seems like we run a lot of ambulance calls. I mean, there's a lot of people that are needing assistance medically, a lot of vehicle identification number checks. We get those daily because people are moving into our area and having to register their vehicles. I checked yesterday, I think it was 148 incidents in a 24-hour period. 148 call for service, and those are the big ones, ambulance calls. Had a few fires lately.
Yeah.
Traffic stopped and.
Yeah.
So.
We have, in the city, we have a lot of traffic complaints and parking issues, so with everybody calls us like folks improperly, it seems like.
Yeah.
Which is good, so we deal with a lot of that, but I think Darrell hit the main focus that it's hard for us right now is just retaining people, getting them to, we finally get them hired and get them to move here, and then the cost of living is so high here. Compared to the wage, it's just hard to keep people, so it seems like we're revolving door basically for law enforcement.
Going to better paying jobs, we've had a lot of retirements, we've opened it up, we're recruiting from outside of our own department and out into the community, and now as far away as other states, and we've had people apply, go through the whole process, give them an offer, they show up, start looking for a house, and had one call back 3 weeks later and said, sorry, I'm going back east because I can't live here, not on what you're paying, and not with the cost of living in the housing, the availability and stuff.
Yeah, when I got hired here, I think there were 70 some applicants in the pool. In the last hiring process I did, we had 2.
Whoa.
If you have any.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we have to reopen it just to get quality, because I mean, we can't hire people that aren't qualified or
Just because they applied does not mean they're qualified.
exact. We're not gonna lower our standards, we're gonna keep opening it up until we do find somebody. I've been very fortunate because the last few we've found been local individuals who are young coming up in the community who have an interest in law enforcement. So been able to get a few of those guys to apply, so it's kind of helped us a little bit because my department is kind of aging a little bit. We're all kind of come up through the ranks together, and a lot of us are right around that retirement age or getting close to it. And now we have pretty big gap into where our younger guys are, so we have a lot of the individuals in the department, so there's a pretty good gap right now, so.
So is it the budgets that need to be increased? Is that kind of where part of this solution would be?
Well, I mean, as far as wages, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's one
So you
thing,
could-
but the other is the cost of living, cost of housing and the availability. Like I'm missing one deputy right now from the Petite area. And the last I heard, I think there were 7 houses for sale of various rank. And it's tough to do that one. You know, especially when you're seeing a lot of our affordable housing get purchased up and turned into Airbnbs and stuff like that. You know. And the other thing, we're talking about some of the hiring process, some of the requirements and not making the cut. I mean, there's 2 things that'll really knock a potential employee out of the running. And then one is physical fitness. They have to be able to make this on the very first day. If they can't, they're gonna get sent home. The other thing is before you can even hire them to send them down there, they have to have a passing psychological test. We've had some failures there, you know, so just because you got people coming in application, doesn't mean you're gonna have a viable employee by the time the process is done.
And then for us to get them fully trained then out on the street where they're actually an employee and on their own is 44 weeks, so it's a huge gap.
We were looking at that, just the expense, for us, for detention deputies, it costs about $25,000 just to get them to the point where they can come to work. You know, through the academy and uniforms and such like that, body armor. Patrol deputies, it's about $35,000. So you're averaging $30,000 per employee every time you got hired. It's should be costly, not to mention the process trying to find.
And then those people are having to leave because they can't find a place to live.
Well, or the expense, you know, I mean, like say, the lure of better money, I've lost some to oil field companies lately, truck driving companies are just paying so much better than law enforcement. Plus you've got the stigma that law enforcement's gotten over the last few years with media and publicity.
I've been fortunate, the city pays pretty well, so, we've been able to maintain some of the guys that we have, but like I said, I've got guys that are hitting retirement age. They're retiring, so.
Hard to keep them in.
Yeah, I mean, things have just gotten a little bit more dangerous out on the street. We've seen a lot more violence in the last few years, and some of our guys that are up there in age are like, I think it's time to retire and get on this.
can we address a question from online that goes back to the Title 25? Does law enforcement in Wyoming ever connect with the state hospital for a debrief type situation for Title 25 cases? Like receiving feedback about anything that can be changed on the community level?
I guess as far as the debriefing, I don't know. I know it's a big issue for prosecutors. I mean, I've talked to our prosecutor here and it's probably the biggest drain on his budget right now, is Title 25. So and again, the state hospital only has so many beds that they can deal with. So they're having to get patients through the system and out before they can get new ones in. And all these law enforcement agencies, the sheriff departments are holding these people that need a spot to go and need treatment. There's just not enough room. I don't know if that answers the question, but as far as debriefing, I don't think so.
I mean, most of the time, once we bring them in and then they're scheduled for a hearing, and we're pretty well audited at that time. It goes through the prosecution or through the county attorney's office, basically, and they go through the process, and we usually don't.
Okay.
So this Oxbow that you were talking about, and we've heard about it a little bit before, is there no interim sort of facility to help with this housing issue? And is Oxbow headed that direction, or is that pie in the sky?
Fortunately, I have the facility that holds. Well, like I say, now I may not see somebody that's in the West Park Hospital over here, psychiatric care. The ones we get in law enforcement, we're in, so we're waiting for them to do that, to pick that person up. But it may be a while.
Yeah.
We're looking at alternative things within the jail. We have a company that does all of our medical stuff and medical treatment to the inmates. Now we're looking at pulling in more resources and purchasing more resources for tele or psychiatric health through the nursing. We're seeing some real improvements on these people while they're in the facility, with the medication they're being given. And obviously they're also the hard drugs, the illicit drugs and the alcohol. So they start dying out, they start getting some treatment, through the nurse practitioners, and it's really helping them.
Oxbow does have, I can't remember how many beds they have, and I believe it's over four. Yeah, I think it's either 6 or 8 beds that they have, and that's for non-violent.
I was thinking about your children, that you had been saying, in an effort to keep them segregated from the adult population. That was also sort of inherent in my question, which I didn't verbalize.
Well, and with the juvenile, the county attorney's office and stuff work real closely with the boys and girls correctional facilities, like Sheridan and Moreland. A lot of times you may see placement there. It just depends on what the issues are.
Okay.
I think one that we referenced earlier was too violent for that. So they went elsewhere. There were other situations dealt with, but yeah, Sheridan and Moreland seemed about the only other options for DFS custody. Department of Family Services.
Thank you.
And there's some good issues.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue for us.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about, because we've got this faith group here. And we did 3 years ago, all joined up with a group called Steward Movement, is the group, it's out of Atlanta, Georgia. And they deal with police issues all over the country. And they have trainings and they have other things, and they're the ones that sponsor this Faith in the Blue event, which is a very small part of what they do. And in that event, they've asked, it's through the group that Sergeant or Chief was talking about earlier. In that event, they try to get police officers and police people meeting in the community with people of faith. It's a start to work with the community. Actually, they'd like them to work with the entire community. Faith places are a good way to do that because they get support. So hopefully these things are happening in your communities. I'm not sure how many of you have Faith in Blue events. So Powell and Cody do, and we've done 3, and I think they've worked out pretty well. They've got a lot of good community support. We did a panel last, where was it?
Yeah,
Last fall.
And it was great. We had 3 people to do the faith community, 3 different churches. And also we had all you guys really, had even the highway patrol that showed up, we didn't expect. And they were there to answer questions and also get to meet people. And I thought it went very well. I'll never forget the one person we had. It was a great story when she talked about having lost her husband. And all of this terrible events happened to her in just a couple of days. Then she went through town and got into a car wreck. And she was just in great distress. We talked about how the officer showed up and she thought for sure she was going to go to jail. And she just poured out her whole story to the officer. We know who he was. and he's very, very, local, easy guy to get along with anyway. And after the whole story was told, she said, "Lady, you need a hug." And she got out and gave him a hug. And she said that was the greatest day of her life because she all of a sudden felt that police cared. And there's some other stories that were told really good as well.
I think it's a really good event. When we started it 3 years ago, we did the panel. We did it at one church, and I think we invited all the different denominations at that time.
Yeah, we did.
For the first one.
We always invite all the denominations.
I think it's about 80 people at that first one. It was
That
pretty
was a
cool.
year congregation.
Yeah. And then the next year we decided that we were gonna do things a little bit different, and we picked just 3 of the different churches that weren't represented as well at the first one. We didn't feel. So we picked those 3, and then we went basically on we did 3 weekends in a row after church. In the afternoon, Sunday afternoon, we would go to the church and we would bring like our bomb unit, our SWAT units, all the different specialties we had. And then we did basically show and tell, because I think the emphasis at that time was trying to get more of the youth groups involved. So they'll make sure that their youth groups were able to come and see all the different stuff we had. So we did 3 different.
Did you put that under recruitment?
Yeah, they really did.
They like to see that
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah, we let them put on the SWAT stuff, the heavy armor, just run around with it on.
Chase them across the
Yeah,
parking lot.
yeah, and they had a good time. The different churches did like barbecue to coincide with it. And then last year we decided to go back to the panel because we were just trying to mix it up a little bit, keep it going. So it's different every year. So I haven't heard what Warren's got in store for me.
No, we're going back to the parking lots, I think.
All right, yeah, that was fun. I mean, we had a lot of participation.
And the funny thing is that we had one patrol car and set it up very nicely so that kids could get in behind the wheel.
Mhm.
They feel good. They weren't interested in that. They were more interested in.
In fact.
And then one of your pictures taken.
Oh, that's funny.
We tell them, hey, this is the only time you're gonna get in here, right? Yeah, so, yeah, I think we talked, Bo and I talked about it, actually trying to do again the parking lot thing. It's just, the problem is, there's not a lot of churches in this town that have big parking lots.
And then the other part is just trying to make it fair and equitable to everybody. So we'll try to pick 3 different churches.
Mhm.
Yeah, try to keep that going, so that it gets them involved too.
Yeah, it does.
And that's an issue we've always had in this town, churches, churches don't really work together very often, which is too bad. Which, you know, it's nice to get people to work together in the faith community and put aside their little differences they got. They can't do it. I had no issue with even bringing the LDS, even despite all the stuff that's going on in the community. They're part of the community too. They have kids. So anyway, it's worked out well. And I did go to this conference put on by Forward Movement in Atlanta. A big conference, for 7,000 registrants. And as I told the chief, you know, they brag about having people from all 50 states come to that conference. And then they called me out to ask the chief, "You have anybody from Wyoming? We're the only state that's not represented." And he didn't.
At my daughter's graduation from college, I said, Warren, do you want to go down?
And I had a great time, met some great people, learned a lot. I'm anxious to put a little workshop on for all your officers or whatever. They had some fantastic ideas. And their whole idea is get law enforcement involved with the community. And so all the workshops were designed on how that's been successful around the country.
And I think it's been successful for us because when I meet different pastors and stuff around the community, I find out what they have available, because we get a lot of people that walk in that need gas, need a bus ticket, need a place to stay. And, you know, we've learned, or I've learned through these different programs, just what's out, and what's available for our community. So there's a lot of resources in Cody when you just start talking.
Yeah. That's good. And again, I've got it all written down how to do that. There were some good ideas put forth by different departments, so it wasn't all coming from the Forward Movement, it was coming from departments where it's worked. It's successful, but they were a lot of them were bigger cities and bigger. They're still happy to have one. And I guess at the last minute, there was a highway patrolman that needed to get there. So he came, I never met him, 7,000.
Oh, wow. 7,000 people, only 1 or 2 from Wyoming?
Yeah.
Mhm.
What is wrong with that?
Most people don't think Wyoming exists.
Yes.
That's a running joke. You
Yeah,
can't.
I don't watch the TV show Yellowstone. I think that's something to do with Wyoming.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with it. Any other questions you all have about policing in general?
What kind of training do you get in dealing with mental health?
CIT, maybe.
Yeah, CIT is the biggest one. I'm sure Roy and Randy
Roy.
just came and talked about it. So Roy's been a very strong advocate for the CIT training. And now he's working for WISCOM and getting that to all the different agencies. And that's one thing I can brag about my agency is all of my people are CIT trained. As soon as you get hired with us, that's one of the very first classes. We have a training matrix that we worked on. There's 3 classes that you have to go to before you can start doing all, everyone wants to go to SWAT training or wants to go to this. Well, you're not
The
going,
cool stuff.
yeah, you're not going to the dual classes until you take CIT and some of the more basic classes. So we have.
Is that statewide or is that just you guys here in our county, Cody?
You said it was mostly up here.
Yeah, and I think, so Roy's been a huge advocate for when he was the police chief over there. They would have a class every year, so it's simple for me to get my guys to go to it. Anyone that we hired during the year, you're going to that training come September. So.
But it's not statewide, other.
I've seen it advertised other places, but I mean, it's really a stronghold up here just because of working with him.
I think even in the detention officer basic and peace officer basic, it's touched on there. I mean, mine was way back when I barely remember. But I think in detention basic, it's dealt with or addressed.
Yeah, that's one of the things that they're starting to do through is trying to incorporate that into the law enforcement academy. So that they'll get it, it's there. It's the intro to it.
So you mentioned DEA time, and I've certainly seen vehicles pulled over and, law enforcement taking everything out. Can you talk to that and
Yeah.
how prevalent that is? And I mean, I think it's becoming more prevalent, right?
Yeah.
It has been.
What I can tell you, one of the big questions we brought up on this campaign for sheriff was, do you think open borders have had an effect on controlled substances? I can tell you absolutely they have. Like I said, I started doing this, the controlled substance probably around 89. From there on buying drugs locally and stuff, using informants in that here and search warrants. You'd usually see half grams, what are referred to as 8 balls or 8 ounces. Sometimes as much as a half ounce, you hear about pounds, but you really never pick that up. My last arrest that I helped with on DCI was 3 pounds. And then shortly after becoming sheriff, DCI got in touch with me and said, hey, we need some people for surveillance out in the county. We've got a couple of residents we're going to hit. I had 1 deputy in Cody, 1 in Powell, so I came out myself and we ended up getting 11 pounds 1 ounce that night. So yeah, it's a common parcel interdiction, meth, 1,500 fentanyl pills, that's common. Not for street officers, that's not where we work, but yeah, it's rampant.
It's growing.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing a lot more, but just being mailed through the mail. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Just
Through the mail.
drop it in the mail, let them go.
UPS and US Mail is one of the better drug dealers around. Deliverers anyway. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You get it in various ways. Like I say, personal interdictions are one way, interstate interdictions, we don't have a lot of interstates in this area, so there'll be people running to Billings or as far away as Denver or Salt Lake to pick up and bring back. Yeah. We've seen a lot change since I started. I mean, marijuana was very low THC. Now you got stuff that butane hash oils that are so potent that people are going to, psychotic episodes. Heroin's prevalent here, more so on the eastern half of the Big Horn Basin, but fentanyl, you name it, we've got it. It's just, drugs are pretty much the same across the country, I think, other than just the quantities change due to the structure of the community. I bought controlled substances and Emblem, I bought it in Casper and Cheyenne. We worked, when I was with with the state, we worked wiretaps, so we'd sit on these things for a couple months and then a bunch of people. Did one down in the Riverton Lander area that was 101 people for 1 case, including a tribal judge and a game warden. So, I mean, it affects it all. So, but it's I'm not noticing a lot coming out on the drug arrest for the county, and I think you guys get quite a bit just at the street level possession
Yeah, most of the stuff we're getting right now is just marijuana, stuff like that. I'd say just marijuana, which you shouldn't say because of the potency of the marijuana they're getting from different locations now. It's basically just being, it's not your homegrown stuff anymore, it's raised in a lab.
Growing season a little shorter out here, so you don't see a lot of it. It happens in back rooms of houses and stuff like that. You don't see the outdoor growth. You do it, somebody started one in the house and doing the spring garden, take it out next to the creek and plant it. Yeah. Like I said, there's some drug stuff that can go on forever, but
It's kind of, it's changed a lot though. I mean, when I first started, it was all about pills and stuff here, it seemed like. And then we really hit the pills hard in 2002 to 4, I think it was.
that was due to the transition. It got hit, the methamphetamine was really bad in early 90s. That we hit it really hard. We brought in a DEA mobile enforcement team into Cody for a couple of months and a bunch of people, and then everybody started turning the pill. You know, you can't justify having meth in your system when you're on probation, taking UAs and stuff. So a lot of people would transfer over to pain pills, and they all had bad teeth from using meth, right? So they'd all say, hey, I got a toothache, and that's why I'm taking these oxycodone to my grandma, but she's trying to get me through to I can get a dentist. And saw a lot of those stories. That pill become a big issue in Wyoming, and then it's kind of rotating back into meth and marijuana.
So it's more for distribution, are you seeing it, or transit?
You mean the stuff
That you're seeing now?
Like I say, it's mostly possession by users.
Oh,
You pick up on the street level now. Of course, the other agencies, you know, DEA and DCI, they're hitting some of the sources coming in with larger quantities. It's all in the method of how you investigate it. We just don't have that kind of time. So those kind of investigators. So the state and feds do that. Like I say, start to see a lot of violence with it. Jason mentioned it earlier, you know, a lot of the last things I did the last year and a half were officer involved shooting. We just had another one last night in Casper. So used to be you'd have one every 8 to 15, 20 years, you know, they weren't common. And started about June of 2021, we started seeing a real increase in them. And about the time I left, I think we're probably up to around 40 some. And couldn't tell you how many we had now across the state. That's just not counting across the state. Yeah.
Is that mental health related? Is that drug related, or is there no pattern?
Well, it's varied a lot. Some of them I had were alcohol related. Some were people just being fed up with the government, and we're the first arm of government they said.
Government form.
Yeah. Some is drug related. The one I had in Casper was drug related. We had Lander was alcohol related. Up on Big Horns was alcohol and just fed up with the government. Alcohol and Basin. Where else do we have that year? I'm trying to remember. The alcohol on the one on the reservation. Last night, it looked like that one might have been drug related. Not sure. Drug or alcohol, one of the two. Okay.
Just curious.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Mental health, I guess, is a huge contributor. You know, whether it's drug induced, alcohol induced, or just mental issues.
So how about domestic violence?
Probably better answer on that. You get more in the city than I see out. We get some out of the county, but seems like it. If you look at the hot spots on the maps we have, it's concentrated in the city areas, you know, Cody,
Yeah.
They're scattered.
Yeah, so I mean, we do deal with domestic violence frequently, but it's not like it used to be. Like when I first started my career in like 94 through probably like 2005, we would see quite a few domestics in the city limits. Now it's kind of, we'll see 1 or 2 every other month or so that are, you know, true knockdown, drag out domestic violence. We get called for a lot of disagreements, verbal altercations, disturbances.
Harassment, threats.
Harassment and threats, is like, yeah. We deal with that all the time, so. Somebody sends you a nasty message on Facebook, you call the police, is basically how it's been lately, but. So like true domestics, we're seeing probably every other month, we might have a really good one, breaking some type of a rest stop. I mean, it's not as prevalent as it used to be, so, yeah,
That's good to know.
yeah.
In the bigger scheme of things.
And maybe because they're not reporting, I don't know.
That could be, but yeah, what we're responding to is not. It's not as prevalent as it was.
It had been.
So we do, I mean, a lot of disturbances and harassment, stuff like that, we deal with constantly on a daily basis.
I did get a question from somebody a while ago that was fascinating. There's a lot of police TV shows on now, on television. Started with Longmire, and then it went into all these other things. Cops, of course, have been around forever. And the new one is Live PD, which actually has another component to it.
Well, I think it's right with Gunsmoke.
Complications with that. But how do you think that's affected policing? I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I haven't had TV in 4 or 5 years or shit, but I can tell you, you see it arresting them, they think you can solve a crime in 30 minutes if they didn't run TV. And it's not that way, if you go to arrest somebody, you gotta do this because I saw this on TV, you gotta read your word, it's this, gotta turn your loose, you get a lot of that. I mean, the different investigative techniques being used, we see a lot of that on some of these shows. But again, it's not a 30-minute, and we're gonna go put some handcuffs on somebody, it takes a while.
Yeah, I haven't watched the shows truthfully, so.
Cops and stuff.
You don't need the stress, you don't need the stress. You see enough of it every day.
You don't need to watch it.
Yeah, if I wanted to, I just watch our guys' body care. I'm sure they're doing better, yeah, and usually I do, I'm sure we're doing what we need to be doing.
We're getting complained.
Yeah, and we get complained, we watch it, so that's one really good thing. Have body cameras, is somebody complain, and people, he called me this, and I'm like, okay, well, come down and watch the video with me, and you show me where he called you that, he did not. So, I mean, and if we do screw up and do something dumb, yeah, it's right there too, so it works both ways.
We don't have body cams yet, but I'd like to add them. And most of our deputies will too. They're pretty pro having a body cam, but it's the cost and expensive video storage, and there's a lot of discovery issues, meaning that we've got to hold on to those items for so long, and then being able to turn it over to the county attorney in the defense. We don't want, we do, but.
It's not like my husband, the bus driver, who could turn it into a supervisor and by the next day or the second day, it was pretty well resolved.
Yeah.
Yours is a different time frame.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah, they are, I mean, they are expensive to maintain, we got them 5 years, well, that was 6 years ago already. And all of a sudden the company lets us know that, hey, the body cameras that you guys are running right now, we're no longer going to be able to service those, and then 3 years from now, they're gonna be obsolete, so now we're out there trying to come up with $100,000 plus to get all new cameras just to go through it, so.
Now obsolete.
Yeah, they're now obsolete.
Oh, yeah, I'm like, that happened to my laptop.
Yeah.
My internet provider
Yep.
was like, oh yeah, we're not updating the internet for you anymore.
Yeah, and you run into that, and then so then you get the cameras, now you have to have this license to do this function and this license to do that. Of course, every license costs, $5,000. It's just crazy, the amount of money that ride around in all those patrol cars.
So they don't break them up like they show on TV.
They don't give them away that's for sure.
Right.
We were fortunate enough to get our start with through a grant through the Department of Justice. So. But then the second time got a grant, and by the time they were able to disperse those funds to us, companies like, well, you guys need to either buy them today or it's going to go up that much more by the end of next month. And it's like, well, now we have to surpass the grant because it was just a launch.
Budgets are fun.
Oh, yeah.
We're just going right through them right now. So.
So what would you say is the most difficult aspect of policing?
Personnel.
Are you in for these, what was the sign they put down in Colorado, the billboard recruiting? You don't have to answer.
No, they didn't tell me I need to go up here from Montana.
Right?
Brian's got enough to do with that.
What did those billboards?
Oh, wasn't it the Cheyenne?
Yeah.
She's Brian.
Right, was,
Sure. It was.
Yeah. Put it on that board, hey, we enforce laws and why we come up here and work.
yeah.
Put it up down in Denver area.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wyoming forces laws come to work for us.
Yeah.
Was not well received.
They call it.
Oh, excellent question. So Liz is asking, can you speak to what the current status of missing and murdered Indigenous peoples in Wyoming is?
West Wind River.
Yep.
Um,
And there's there's also the movie, and I think it's come out now, Who She Is. It's a PBS documentary.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
You know, I worked down there from 2004 to 2006, and you know, it's probably really no different than outside the reservation. You know, the indigenous people, we have crime there, but I never noticed the amount of missing people. I've never watched Wind River, but I've had a lot of people tell me about it, and I didn't see that down at the time. Whether that's changed or not, I don't know. When I was with Northwest, with DCI, Riverton and Powell, the two offices. I was in Riverton for a couple of years, and we still communicated between the two agencies, but the FBI handles a lot of that, so unless there was something outside the reservation, we didn't deal with it too much. If we did deal with the drugs on there, we were deputized by DEA and worked that, but the FBI handles the violent crimes on the reservation, so I really can't answer what she's asking.
Sure.
And I don't have any experience with this.
And as some of you have been around a long time, maybe you remember, I was in Lander at the time. And working on the Shoshone side of the reservation. There was a number of hangings of kids. They're all kids, and they were hanging themselves from door handles, all kinds of things. And I think it got up to 7. Most of them were Arapaho. And the last one was Shoshone, that's the one that they did the service for. And they tried everything to stop it. They brought in psychologists, they did all kinds of things. These kids groups are, you know, you did it, I can do it. It's a bravery act.
This is how close they can get to that before they.
Something like that, yeah, you know, it's like, this shows the signs I'm a warrior, you know, because I can kill myself. And it was really confusing to everybody, and one of them started making all the national news. And one of them, they was the Arapaho side, and they had a funeral. A lot of people came to it just because it was publicized. And the press all came. They all wanted to be there to shoot this thing. They had to call the FBI agents to come out and keep them from being.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if you've been to the Arapaho Cemetery, it's pretty, permanent, I guess. It's just out in the middle of rocks and stuff, and they have their own services. They don't let a lot of people in, so that was probably the issue.
That was a Catholic service.
Yeah.
So,
Right there,
but that made a lot of news, and I think that, and this, the amazing thing was, it only stopped after some of the medicine, and we all got together to prepare for, and quit.
Yeah.
You know, and then come back, and they still do a lot of suicides there, that's a big problem. But it's one of those things that everybody says, there's nothing you can do, it really isn't.
There seems to be a gap in the detectiveness, where, you know, the investigation, thank you. Yeah, that-
That's why we're a group.
In that, right, because the FBI, it has to reach a certain threshold for them, and they only have so many people there to do it,
Well,
do the investigations, right?
Enforcement under two, like you have the.
Right.
Police, you have the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Right,
And then the FBI.
but they need funding, right, the BIA.
BIA, no, that's federal, that's.
Right, but they still need funding to be, to have people, just like you're saying recruitment, they need their.
Yeah, I haven't been down there since the big,
Mhm.
that's problem we're having with
Yeah.
recruitment, but, when I was there, they had plenty of people, the BIA side, and of course, when the police was up there in Fort Washington, and,
We're gonna have an issue, a session on this in a couple months, so we'll let you know.
okay. Let me know how it worked out.
Yep.
We do one of these on the reservation.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, they treated me very well then.
Yeah.
They sent me all over the place doing math classes for them.
Oh.
It was good, it was a good experience.
And one of the weird things that happens was there that maybe they've corrected it. You know, if a white person goes across the reservation to speed, they can be stopped by the police, but can't be ticketed. They have to wait for a highway patrol. I don't know if that's still the case.
Yeah, there's a whole, it's almost an 8-hour class on, they're called, it's jurisdictional or issues on reservations. You know, so you have to go through because, if let's say the crime is indigent on it, or to start, you know, native on native, then it's could be a BIA and or an FBI problem. But if it's, native with white, it has its own jurisdictions as to which way the person who's the victim or the aggressor is. You know, it's jurisdictional issues in Indian countries, but that class.
And what if they're both aggressive?
What's that?
What if they're both aggressive?
Well, maybe. Yeah.
Then you get a
task.
Yeah, but if you had, let's say, white on reservation.
So all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Oh.
But when you need them, they're not necessarily right.
Like there was another guy was paired up with the Bureau of Indian Affairs agent, and I'll tell you, he's one of the hardest working agents ever been around. He's the one that pretty much instrumental in that 101 people case. That made national news. I mean, just because of law enforcement on reservations, sure. And so they're good hands. Worked with a couple of them, pretty good people.
A couple of times I've been, they do roadblocks. To stop people to see if they're, we'll see if they're drunk.
DUI checkpoints.
Yeah.
They
You
do
don't
that.
see that anywhere else in the state. You know, where they just routinely go out there nighttime to stop people driving on the highway. That's a reservation. Yeah. It's got its own little sovereign rules. So what can we, I was gonna say, what can we do to help law enforcement? What do churches do and what do just citizens do?
Faith communities, yeah.
Oh, man.
I think there's Yeah, I think you guys do a great job of providing us services. I touched on earlier. Anytime I've needed help in the community, I've reached out to some of the different pastors and they will point me in the right direction, help me with different issues. So, and one really good story, we had a younger gal that ended up here in our community with a guy that's several years older than her, and they got into domestic dispute. He basically beat her up, and he had warrants out of the different states. So, and when we arrested him, then she was left here with absolutely nothing whatsoever. She didn't have anything. And I reached out to my pastor at that time, and we were able to get her a bunch of different services. We were able to. My pastor drove her a personal car to Billings, got her on an airplane, got home back to her family, and 4 years later, I got a FaceTime message with my pastor on it, and this gal, and she was now a registered nurse. She'd gone,
That's cool.
gotten away from all that stuff and was a nurse. So it's a pretty special story. So. And that was just from your guys.
I was curious about getting back to the body cameras. in medicine, we have to keep records like forever because of lawsuits. I was wondering what your time span is for keeping that data on the body.
We have to follow the Wyoming state retention, so it just depends on what the crime is. Misdemeanors, I believe. A year, felonies are 10 years. Most alcohol offenses, you're supposed to be keeping those records for 50 years.
Yeah.
We're alcohol fish?
Yeah.
What is alcohol need of that
Alcohol
law?
specifically. That's gotta feel like somebody in
More than
1892 thought this was a good idea.
No, that's in the Wyoming detention. And then, of course, they homicide or something like that. I think it's-
Yeah.
Yeah, alcohol's 50 years.
Like, homicide makes sense out.
You may not be able to answer this one, but I've always struggled with when a person gets a DUI, they're let go. They get another one, they're let go. They get another one, they're let go. It's like, why can't we stop that sooner? I mean, yeah, I mean,
Top
you know,
reports, I don't know.
Yeah, we would love to see that happen. It's up to the judge at what time. We're seeing it,
that's crazy.
we're seeing it more and more now. They're getting minimal fines even now, getting
Yeah.
back out. It's
It's
like,
like, it's not a big deal to whoever's sentencing them, but
no,
to the person who was affected, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that just seems.
we're seeing that, yeah,
Yeah.
it does not seem
Well,
fair.
letting people just do it over.
Exactly.
Hurt someone.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, we are seeing the same issues.
that's how my sister died.
DUIs.
And it just seems like one of the most preventable things, you know, you get one DUI, you should be like done, don't have a license, but I suppose people drive.
Well, I think now is the third subsequent offense is a felony. Or the fourth.
I think it's fourth allegedly, but
They can be part and flood down.
yeah, it's an issue here.
That's exactly the question, it's supposed to be you guys, who
Oh,
are doing the arrest, and you're like, oh, you know, frequent flyer job here.
so in Cody, we're seeing where if we arrest somebody for public intoxication, which is just like an infraction, it's not even a misdemeanor. Their fine is almost double what first time DUI offenses.
Really? Wow. Yeah, somebody needs to look at that.
Same thing like that.
That is not right.
It's not right.
Yeah.
It's not.
Some of the frustrating things for us, and I understand the reason for doing it, but we'll see offenses like that and they'll be given 40 days to be served on weekend.
Oh, on the weekends.
So, yeah, and it's real hard on our jail staff because, you know, you've got 3 or 4 or 5 of those people that are doing that. So on Friday at 5 o'clock, I've got a bunch of people standing at the doorway to be checked in. So you're booking them in and you're booking them out 40 times. You know, if they get a 40-day sentence, be served on weekends. The problem that it causes, they start to figure out how the booking process works and what's, you know, they should be getting thoroughly searched, but they're starting to figure out how to smuggle stuff in, you know, whether it be body carriage or whatever. And that's when you start looking at things being introduced into the detention center. Yeah,
It's like,
not,
it's just a hotel stay.
but that.
Then it's just a hotel stay that doesn't have a fancy
Well,
bed.
and they're really-
Yeah, that's 3 square meals in a bed.
Yeah. They're trying to keep the people from losing their job. Like, keeping their work going, but yeah, it's frustrating.
When I was in North Carolina, like, we had folks who were on work release, but they weren't just out, like, they got dropped off at 8:30 or 9 and picked up at 5. And
We
like,
don't drop off and pick up, but they do, occasionally we'll see a work release. Now, when I was still in detention, we had a guy, that, got like 6 months in jail for a pretty serious crime. We gave him work release, and he was smart, before he went to jail, he put all of his stuff in storage, rented his house. And he's now living with us and making a
Making
paycheck,
money.
plus making
Making
rent.
extra money.
So, put $30,000 in the bank in 1988. So, the courts then started looking at, allowing us to charge, like, I think if you're out on work release with us, 30% of your net has to come to the jail. They have to write a check,
Yeah,
so it's not frequently.
basically the same as what
But
everybody.
it's not, work release isn't a real common thing for us. I have the ability to reject that.
Yeah, I'm just like, it makes sense not having people lose their jobs, but having this like,
Yeah.
it's
Well-
just your Saturday hotel.
Yeah, well, there's a program around the state called 24/7. Courts are really advocating for that. I don't have a problem with it. It's just I don't have the personnel to do it right now. And what that is you get a person that's arrested for an alcohol offense. Maybe they get 6 months in jail or whatever, but instead of that, they're allowed to do what they call a 24/7 program. So they have to consent to having an alcohol test between 6 and 8 in the morning and 6 and 8 at night every day. They have to pay $4 a day to do
Yeah.
that.
So,
Which is, you know, and again, it's to save the family and the home life and the job.
yeah,
For that person. But again, once you start setting a regimented schedule like that, now they want to beat it. You know. If I go in at 6, you know, drink until noon and drink water, and check in at 8,
Yeah.
then I can come start drinking. I don't know what the current rate is on that, but you know, we've had weekenders come in drunk and you know, so they spend 2 days with us, so we're not getting, still get to go do it.
I've been on the drug court board here for a while, and that happens quite frequently. They really figure out, you know, okay, if we're testing at certain times, I could drink up to this point. Start drinking water, I'll be fine.
If they would just use that intellectual power to do
Yeah.
something positive, you know?
they're like, I'm like, we've got smartwatches, can they do a randomized, like, it's gonna ping you at some point
They do
between
have,
6 AM
yeah.
and noon, and you've got 15 minutes to put in your
Call the scram
response.
device.
Yeah. Take a scram device is what it's called.
Would kind of defeat that.
It's better because they can do it randomly, but there, and what we've seen, we got 2 different, bail bonds companies here in our area. They're starting to employ those, so I think maybe the judges start looking at that a little bit, where they know where they're at, and then they have to, when they get pinged, they've got so many minutes to get the breathalyzer. And it actually has a picture of their face on it, so they can say it's not somebody else blowing, hey, Warren's blowing this. They'll know.
Yeah.
But, so that I think is more effective, but.
The whole thing, like, the fact that it's always kind of an arms race between like trying to make sure that people comply versus people trying to defeat the systems rather than people who actually like want to change or engage in better behavior is.
In the drug world for us, spice was better. And spice was just like an organic deal, and it was sprayed chemical. Well, we figure out what the chemical was, the DEA would, they'd outlaw that and change the new chemical. So you never could arrest them with spice because you didn't know if it was illegal yet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Liz is saying that she suspects DUI laws are not what we wish them to be because of our built environment. Driving is so essential. She thinks that might be different if driving weren't so essential. Which there's something to that, probably.
Yeah.
Well, you see a lot of these people that are on probation, suspended, they're driving. to get to work. A lot of times they're driving to get to their buddy's house too.
Yeah. They drive.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Catching people all the time driving on a suspended license, so.
I wonder how many judges out here are like, it's 2 AM, there's nobody on the highway anyway.
Because they're leaving the bar.
Yeah. I was a street officer working midnight shift. Between 2 and 3, you're out there.
You're busy, you're a busy guy. What motivated you guys to go into law enforcement?
Lived in a law enforcement family, my dad was, and the funny thing was, he told me never get into that. So, but then my brother got into, I started, I just turned 22, I was working construction, it's cold and windy in the wintertime, hot and stuff. And I had one of Cody police officers trying to talk me. It had to be, yeah, it gotta be 21, so I was working construction, and when I hit 21, then the jail sergeant came to me and said, hey, we want to push you to work in the jail. So I go, oh, great. You know, and
At least it's out in the cold and wind.
yeah, but I did it. I tell you, had things, circumstances, been a little different, I'd probably still be in there. I mean, it was a good place to work. You had 8 hours in there, you're done, got into other aspects of law enforcement, changed, it's like 24/7.
Yeah, well, I was in college, I was actually going for business administrative with a minor in computers and. Just got to the point where I'm like, man, this is not what I really want to do. I need to figure out what I want to do. And I had a really good friend. I ran cross country in college, and a good friend of mine that I ran cross country with in high school. I had gone into law enforcement. We were talking one weekend. He's like, man, you should really look at going into law enforcement. I love it. It's different every day. You work outside, do as much as you want, little as you want on certain days, or whatever you want to do. And I started doing a couple ride-alongs with him, and it was just exciting. And just hooked after that. Ended up going through the academy when I was 21 again.
It's one of those jobs that, I don't know if there's anything else like it. I mean, get paid to do what we do sometimes. Sometimes it's really bad, sometimes really good. One of my sergeants told me when I first started, he said, you need to keep track of all these things that happen to you and write a book when you're done, because it'll be a bestseller when you're finished, and I didn't believe him. And I forgot.
Yep.
There are some out there that are good. Interesting. It's very, can be very fulfilling.
Well, then the subsequent question is what keeps you in it?
Yeah, so when I was working our detective division, I specialized in child crimes. So I worked all the really hard cases, but I looked at it as nobody else is going to advocate for the child in a lot of these cases, because a lot of them are too young to talk for themselves or whatever. So I had pretty good success at solving a lot of those. So that was very fulfilling. A lot of times I'll see some of these kids out in our community that are now young adults. They don't realize I was involved in their life before their time, which is really good. They put that on. So did that for about 4 years, three and a half, 4 years. And it's time to move on to.
Well, you can only probably do so much.
Yeah.
I mean, because that would cost a lot.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. It was fulfilling.
How we doing for time?
Got plenty.
Yep, just on 6:07.
How long are we going?
Did you say 6:10?
How long would you like to go?
30.
Well, the live PD, I watched it occasionally, because it's addictive. So watching this live, because you don't know what's gonna happen. It apparently has a big following, big following.
It's the same for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of it is done in South Carolina and Florida. Those are the two states that seem to focus on it, and Ohio, Toledo. And they go around, anything that's live up front, so there's no paperwork, there's no, all that stuff that I know you, they're all going through, but there's none of that shown. It seems like, especially in South Carolina, everybody's got a gun on the seat, and nobody has an ID. They don't carry IDs. The officers have to ask them, do you have any ID on you? You know, and I'm thinking, around here, that's the first thing you want to see. Like, who are you?
Well, they're not showing you the traffic stop with grandma and the Bible on the feet.
No, they're showing grandma with.
Well, I just stopped grandma with a casket.
The big thing is they seem to know everybody who's doing that. I mean, it's like they've been there, like you brought up. They get back off, they're picked up, and then they're back on the street again, dealing drugs and everything else.
Well, in the drug world, we talk about how, we deal with 10% of the people 90% of the time. So you get to know that 10% pretty well, and so you start hearing, now in this job, I'm dealing with 90% of the people 10% of the time. So, but other way around. Yeah, you get to know your players, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, our street guys know everybody that's out there, it seems like, so.
Usually you go to them and say, hey, I'm looking for Billy Smith, where's he at? Oh, he's driving a red Mustang. He's like, no. In DCI, they were our street officers, were our eyes and ears. That's how we do a lot of our intelligence, so.
So with the tourist season, right, is picking up now, what things now start to happen more frequently than?
Motor vehicle crashes and speeding, yeah,
Yeah,
just driving.
driving stuff.
Yeah, our traffic crashes will really increase over the next few months here. You know, luckily, most of them are minor, you know, fender benders and parking lots, stuff like that.
So not just because people from the plains are trying to drive in the mountains. This is just normal, you should know better.
And we laugh because the local people are like, oh, those tourists come here and cause all these accidents. You guys are so busy, and 9 out of 10 times it's 9 out of 10 times, which is like.
Yeah.
Anything you want to tell us?
Yeah.
Just thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are an important part of our existence and a good resource for us. So.
Some of the things we've been working on, one of the big questions lately, of course, is the rumors about the big buses full of illegal immigrants coming in the area. We haven't substantiated any of those yet that weren't documented work visas coming into work on hotel and stuff. But I had some people go, you need to publish that and put it in the paper. If they know, because then the real thing will happen. That's a big fear. I was just reading an email from, I think it was Lascaux, where they're wanting input on what laws we need in place for that. It was pretty silent thread. I didn't hear a lot of answers coming out of it.
Yeah, sent it out. I didn't see any.
Well, it's good, it's a good sign.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It means that it's working.
Yeah.
With a little bumps and stuff, but it's working.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's not Mayberry, but it's sure not Miami Vice either.
But it's a long line.
We did that something.
That was just down in New Mexico, that's where they filmed the one where in Las Vegas.
Right.
And there's a hotel there called Plaza, which is always in the background of the scenes, you know. And we stayed in that hotel, second time I've been there, but one of the neat things is each room has a little picture of some famous person that would stay there. So we were above Michelle Obama. But yeah, they had Robert Taylor, who was the that guy, and the woman played the role, you know, deputy. And they take a big deal about it, that town, because New Mexico draws that money from movies. They're really big on it. Yeah.
We get a lot of people, you know, come through here, so people every time.
Yeah, you would.
Now the rodeo's about to start up hot, maybe that'll cause a lot of traffic and.
Drunk cowboys.
Yeah, it's just fixing to get busy, I'm sure.
It's really picked up for the last 10 days. It's really, and it will just pick up through August probably.
I think there are incidents, I think suicides are one that, you know, suicide related calls we get a lot of and stuff.
That goes up in the summer?
I don't, it seems to stay pretty steady.
Oh, okay.
It's like a common problem.
I would have thought it'd been be worse in
The winter,
the winter.
Yeah, spring, it seemed like we had quite a few.
spring, winter, and fall, summer. Yeah.
Any online questions? No. We had a couple people online.
Perhaps maybe, you know, I mean, burglaries, we haven't had too many of those, knock on wood.
Yeah, I know, it's been really good. I mean, of course, we have a Walmart, so we have a lot of retail theft out of there. Everybody comes to Walmart to steal from it, seems like.
Not just this one, all of them.
Yeah.
All of
Same,
them,
same.
it's a hotbed. You know, when they do a lot of the crime stats and different analytical stuff, there's always a big red spot around every Walmart in every city, it seems like. Just have a lot of crime around, a lot of theft.
A lot of civil disputes lately too, you know, with irrigation and road easements and stuff like that. Harassment and threats, you know. Somebody's thinking this about me, but that one has been a real plague lately. We haven't had any major.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate, especially with the burglaries and auto burglaries. It's been
A lot of fire calls lately, they're actually fires, a lot of times just alarms, but they've had some pretty serious ones. We had the Cody Foundry and just had one the other morning at the business down by Triple L. But,
And here they don't send like they do in the big cities, fire department to every call,
fire marshal.
Charter crash, should be.
any call, any,
Like
Police call.
911 usually get
yeah,
free. That doesn't happen.
You motor vehicle crashes, you'll see a lot of that, where they'll send EMTs. Fires, they'll pay ambulances to stand by.
But you don't roll them necessarily.
No, not unless we think we need them. But they're busy, I'll tell you, I mean, the call,
Yeah.
they're running 10 to 20 calls a day, I think. I can count it for you, but this is a substantial number of the calls for service or EMT or medically related. And a lot of times it's, like this the other day, I think we had 2 people over 90 that fell out of their bed. They weren't hurt, they just need a lift assist to get back in. People fall, and you see a lot of that in winter time, especially. Lately, it's been a few that,
You ever delivered a baby?
what's that?
Have you ever delivered a baby?
No.
We're getting a call tomorrow.
Now you.
No.
I've been to, the worst ones are probably choking babies and stuff like that, non-responsive babies, I've had a lot of those. Sid's death used to be a big thing, I don't think.
We have it here, it's quite a few years, thank you.
Yeah, kids calls are probably the worst.
What our guys do, they roll to ambulance calls to assist. We had a gal choking a couple months ago, she was turning blue, and the officer got there and was able to do the Heimlich, saved her life. And with another one where they were doing CPR, that's probably 6 months ago, they saved her, so.
That is rare. Usually CPR is not safe.
Yeah, high percentage, but
No,
still do it.
no.
So do you have thoughts on a Good Samaritan law? I believe Wyoming's the only state that doesn't have one.
I have a law, but, I mean, it's usually it's the way it is. You're talking about a good Samaritan where you're trying to help someone, and the liability doesn't transfer to you if something bad happens.
Well, there's that, but there's,
Good Samaritan laws do a couple of things. They say if you're doing what a reasonable person with your level of training would be doing, then you can't like be sued by someone if you break their rib while performing CPR. But they also do things like you can't be arrested for being on drugs if you're calling because your friend overdosed and like trying to get them help. Because otherwise they find that people will just like run away when their friend is dying because they don't want to get arrested.
Now what they're doing is they're getting with their friend and they're getting Narcan. Friend gets super high, and when he codes out, then you give him Narcan and save him, and then tomorrow's my day to do that. We're seeing that.
so,
And
Well,
not so cool.
And Narcan people can then re-overdose because they're angry and they've abruptly come down from a high and they're very motivated to
mental
go
health and
take more drugs.
But yeah, the ones I've seen 3 come back from it, and they've all been pretty violent, pretty agitated.
Yeah, I mean, because it hits your brain and you go through withdrawal in
you get it, you do it
30 seconds.
or whatever. A lot of times the EMTs that they're giving them a little bit at a time to keep them going and then get them to the hospital. And then
So they don't pop up
Yeah.
and punch somebody again.
in fact, one of the classes we went through at the state, they had that one ER flight doctors in there. And he said when he was in an ambulance crew back east, he said if you didn't like the ER doc, you keep bumping them a little bit, to keep them alive, and get them and juice them up real quick and leave.
We would never.
No, we don't have enough
Yeah.
honest users.
I mean, part of my first Narcan training that I went to was basically like,
Yeah.
like you extend your arm when you are dosing them because you want to get out of
And
there.
run fast.
Yeah, so like get out that arm and reach the minute you do that, because they almost always pop up angry.
Yeah.
You have ruined a really nice time for somebody who did not realize that they were dying.
But the thing about, kicking your buddies loose, I mean, we've had several instances that around the Big Horn Basin where somebody be overdosed and the friends would drag them into the shower and try to run cold water on them. Cause they're high, they'll run and call on the phone, hey, you know, this address, Billy's overdosing.
Yeah.
They get there, there's nobody there, or the only sober ones there, then it's not high. But, a lot of them, they follow the internet rules of advice, they're Googling how to do this, so
Yeah.
cold showers and stuff like that. There's
Shocking.
mostly pretty engineering.
People who are not sober don't make great decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
I can tell you that I'm real pleased about how PD and the sheriff's department has utilized Chapel's program for a number of years. And we're now up to three. We're ready to go with the sheriff's department.
and then we read our policy by certain legal staff and it got me exposed because I would never have thought that there would have been a legal issue about a chaplain program. But
Really?
there have been
This
lawsuits.
is the US. You can have lawsuits.
You know, denominational issues mainly, where got to provide a non-denominational chaplain program. Because people are getting sued.
But if you're, as long as you let churches know that they could provide a chaplain. Is that? cover that?
It was in the policy, we're great with one, and hey, come on board, but we're still trying to work through that. With that being said, we're also looking at some mental health within the officers and deputies too, because it's becoming a bigger deal.
Right, the chaplain
Yeah.
program is more than, at least from my perspective, I thought it was a little more than just somebody who's in an accident or
Yeah.
somebody that comes in
Oh, yeah.
and is booked or whatever. I guess I was making the assumption that it was also for the staff.
It is.
For
Yeah.
staff,
Yeah, you
yeah.
should around me all the time, I'm man, that's great, so. I need to do it.
It's for both, and we do, both agencies just do a lot of officer well-being. We do a lot of trainings on a lot of different programs. We're actually bringing in some people early this winter, some professionals come in. Help us work through, how to kind of decompress and deal with some of that stressful stuff.
Debrief.
Debrief that, especially after the death of Sergeant Nevada, Cranky over in Sheridan. A lot of different programs right after.
The county's actually invested in what they call Wyoming EAP, it's an employee assistance program, but it's a website you go to. They're paying about $3,000 a year for us as employees, just,
Yeah.
and it's the big thing with mental health or mental wellness and officers and deputies is the anonymity they don't.
Right.
It's a big hurdle. With that, they can log in themselves and get that help without anybody knowing.
Yes, we have the same.
Well, with a chaplain, you have confidentiality too,
Yep.
which is,
And that's a big part of it.
yes.
So
I
everything
guess
is,
I was,
what's in the car stays in the car when we do ride-alongs.
Mhm.
And I've abided by that for over 30 years. And that's, if there's an issue there, it has to go through with one exception, and that's if they're talking, taking their.
Mhm, mhm.
Hurting themselves or somebody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah,
But, we do a lot of different things. We have to do the ride-alongs to get to know them. And that's
Right.
how we do it. You gotta build trust. That we are not gonna squeal on your side. And we're not gonna try to convert you into some religion you don't want.
Mhm.
That's important.
Mhm.
And then, so we get calls, not only, I've had times when the chief will say, ride with somebody in particular, I think that person's struggling a little bit, it's a chance to talk in confidentiality. And we deal with some of the people in the community, we get calls for suicide things.
definitely.
Yeah, and one case came to mind was, this sort of is an issue, I thought, that we're not all included in this understanding. Was a suicide call, and of course, I couldn't go in until the gun was clean. That's part of our policy. And so the sergeant I was with went in and we made sure that the gun wasn't gonna shoot himself, but the shotgun in his neck. And the family said something to the effect of, well, we're pretty sure it was not loaded because we took the bullets away. Because we knew he might do this, this old guy, ready to die. And so finally they got the gun away, came in, and officers talking with family members, was in the living room. And I went and talked with the guy who was had the gun there. He just had, listened to him for 20 minutes, and he said, I'm not gonna go to the hospital, I'm not gonna go to the hospital. I'm ready to die, I'm ready to do all these things. You can almost understand why he's doing this, his friends are gone, he's 80 something, you know. And I had him talked down, I felt pretty good about it, I thought we had it all settled, and EMTs arrived. First thing that EMT said when he came to the door, oh, we're taking you to the hospital.
Oh. Yeah.
Then we found out after we talked it over, gun was loaded. All we had to do is pull that trigger. And I've seen in the past where that happens in somebody's small space. You know, we're talking about it. You've probably seen it too. So, but I've looked in the thing, and I haven't seen a death notice, so I'm assuming he's still alive. So, you know, there's things like that, and, you know, we're trained to deal with that. Most of listening skills, it's listening skills. We listen. And we don't try to convert, we don't try to push our ideas on anybody. It's going on, whether it be an officer or a person. You know? That's why I think it's been pretty successful, because, and I've seen the police department has been very, very good for all those years. It's been no great, there's little disagreements with stuff. You know, you guys get along pretty well.
The two departments,
Well,
or you mean the chaplain program?
yeah, the chaplain's pretty, yeah, and in the departments too.
Definitely our departments get along very well.
Yeah. So, you know. But whenever you fix that thing out with a lawyer.
Yeah, we need to get a Charlie on that. He was one that headed up for me. Yeah, things are starting to slow down a little bit. I don't want to say that too loud.
Yeah, just change.
Charlotte is your assistant.
Yeah.
And she's concerned about the people in jail.
Yeah.
That they go through a lot of pressure and they could use somebody to talk with.
There's a lot of jail, chaplains in jails. That's very common ministry.
Yeah. So anyway. Are we ready to eat?
Well, I think so. If there are no questions, we'll say farewell to our folks online. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you
Thank you.
for being here very much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. It's helpful for you guys to talk through these issues. I'm sure you don't get to do that.
No, it's true, you know, we deal with so much during the day, it's hard to look back and okay, what are we doing with this week?